Oh, hello there. I kind of need to address the elephant in the room. Now, I actually, the whole schedule is kind of out of whack when it comes to commentary companions because I actually intended to do a commentary companion for the 2002 Spider Man movie after doing Pinocchio. I swear, that was the plan, and that this commentary was going to come after, and it would have been released like on the 14th. But yeah, that was the plan, but I got sick. I had a nasty cold, and I knew that I couldn't record a commentary companion for Spider Man in my sickly condition. So that's kind of one of the reasons why I'm doing this now instead of like I intended for the 14th. But the idea of doing a commentary for the original Snow White was definitely on the schedule. I wanted to tie in with the release for the live action remake to Snow White that's released today on the 21st, as I published this on the 22nd. But yeah, this was definitely part of the plan. So yeah, if you want to watch the original animated movie while listening to my commentary companion, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs is currently available to stream on these platforms. Of course, if you don't have Disney Plus and you have Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs on DVD or VHS, by all means, you can listen to the commentary while watching it on DVD. I should also point out the elephant in the room, this commentary has absolutely no political agenda whatsoever. I mean, I'm not that kind of asshole who will, uh, drag in myopic political beliefs into what's just a movie, okay? I don't do that. Just no negative ideologies here. I mean, that's the idea. This is done entirely for fun, and yes, it's intentionally made to tie in with the live action remake, but, like I said, it's for fun. Just remember that when you listen to the commentary. But anyway, enjoy the show. Welcome to Commentary Companions. I'm your host, Tony Garcia, and today we'll be looking at the original animated movie, the one that started it all, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, released in 1937 at Carthay Circle Theatre. And of course, like I said before, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs is the first official animated movie, which was the biggest game changer of its day. And primitive as it may be by today's standards, modern animated movies wouldn't be possible without the success of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. That's right, we wouldn't have films like Encanto, Wish, or the Spider-Verse movies, or any other animated movie without Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. I remember watching this film when I was a kid, and this film was around when my grandparents were children and when my parents were children, so it is literally a film of a generation, if you catch my drift, especially since it was made back in the 1930s. And the 1930s were a difficult time back then because, well, you have to remember, this was during the Great Depression. And, Franklin D. Roosevelt was president, so this was a big deal. When Walt Disney pitched the idea of an animated movie, people were so skeptical about it. They were like, an animated movie. Are you crazy, Walt? They were so skeptical that they literally nicknamed it Disney's Folly. But I guess you could say that Walt Disney got the last laugh. And here I am going to talk about the production of it all. Now, Walt Disney conceived the idea of making an animated movie back in 1933, back when he was doing Silly Symphony shorts. I guess you could say that Merry Melodies are a Silly Symphony knockoff. Merry Melodies being a Warner Brothers cartoon that introduced a lot of Looney Tunes. But anyway, in late March of 1933, Disney was approached by the co-founder of United Artists with a proposal to do a feature-length animated live-action version of Alice in Wonderland, which makes sense when Walt Disney and his brother Roy first formed the Disney Animation Studio in 1923, 102 years ago. One of Disney's first original projects that he did before even Mickey Mouse. Well, it's a live-action animated hybrid of Alice in Wonderland. That's where Disney got his start. But anyway, while Disney wanted to do it, Alice in Wonderland, that idea was scrapped when Paramount began doing their own version of the film, which was released in 1933. Specifically December 22nd, 1933, but I bet you don't even know that version exists since, Alice in Wonderland eventually became an animated movie in the 1950s. So I guess it comes full circle. When Disney was unable to do his own take on Alice in Wonderland, he thought about doing Rip Van Winkle based on the Washington Irving story of the same name, but since Paramount owned the rights to Rip Van Winkle, they were like, Disney was like, nope, guess I can't do that either. So, eventually, Disney decided to do an adaptation of the Grimm fairy tale Snow White. Now, the original German fairy tale was published in 1812. So, this story is ancient. It is literally 213 years old. Can you believe that? That's just amazing. Now, this was a 1930s animated movie, and unfortunately back then, the voice actors couldn't be credited. I don't know why, but, that's the way it was, but I guess I can talk about the voice actress who is responsible for being the first original voice of Snow White. Now, Snow White was voiced by Adriana Caselotti, and she was actually a teenager when she first... She was actually in her early 20s when she first voiced Snow White. And Caselotti had voiced Snow White up until her death in 1997. And, well, other stuff that she did was, well, she's actually, her voice is actually featured in The Wizard of Oz. She's the voice of Juliet saying, "Wherefore art thou, Romeo," in The Wizard of Oz, in If I Only Had a Heart. And she was also a singer at the Martini Bar in It's a Wonderful Life. For most of her life, a lot of the roles she did were uncredited, but she eventually got her due in documentaries like The Music of Disney, and she even voiced Snow White in radio productions, and she even provided her voice for several Disney shorts. So yeah, she's definitely a big deal. And I guess I can also acknowledge the man who voices the nameless prince. He doesn't even have a name. But yeah, the voice actor is Harry Stockwell. And Harry Stockwell was also a singer. And his son actually became an actor as well, Dean Stockwell. The late Dean Stockwell was a child actor, and he was also known for starring in Quantum Leap. And yeah, he was Rear Admiral Albert Al Kalavicki in Quantum Leap. He was Brother Cavill on Battlestar Galactica. And he was Navy Secretary Edward Sheffield on JAG. JAG? Is that even correct? But of course, he was also in The Rainmaker and the 2004 remake to The Manchurian Candidate. So, Dean Stockwell had one hell of a career up until his retirement in 2015. But I know him best for voicing the elder Tim Drake in Batman Beyond: Return of the Joker. I didn't even know that his dad was the voice of the Prince until I looked him up on IMDb. Kind of blew my mind. I mean, I love this film, but man, the Prince is bland. He is the blandest Disney Prince I've ever seen. He's right up there with Prince Philip from Sleeping Beauty as far as blandness goes. I'm sorry, but the Beast from Beauty and the Beast and Aladdin have more development as characters. Now, the voice of the Huntsman is Stuart Buchanan. And Stuart Buchanan was also an announcer, a radio man, a TV producer, and he was an educator. He was actually the casting director of Snow White, and he actually voiced Goofy in the Mickey Mouse Theater of the Air, which was a variety radio series for kids. It was heard on the NBC radio show. But yeah, you're going to find out that there are actually two actors in Snow White that shared the role of Goofy. You'll be blown by who. It's kind of funny. Now, the music was provided by Frank Churchill, Lee Harline, and Paul Smith. Now, I actually mentioned that Lee Harline and Paul Smith both collaborated together and had both worked on Pinocchio, as I mentioned in the last commentary companion. And they were pretty much Disney collaborators. And their other composer was Frank Churchill. And Churchill, not only did he compose for Snow White, he helped compose for Dumbo, Bambi, The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad, and Peter Pan. Churchill sadly passed away at the age of 40 in 1942. Give the huntsman credit. The dude has standards. I mean, killing kids? I mean, that's where he draws the line. I respect that. It's a shame that that is the last we see of the huntsman, but hey, he is technically a good guy. Red herring, but he's a good guy. And in this forest scene, this is kind of technically considered probably one of the scariest scenes for a non-horror movie, if you stop and think about it. I mean, this probably gave kids nightmares in 1938, and it does scare some kids today. I mean, I think my mom might have been scared of this scene as a kid. I'd probably have to ask her. Ah, a scary a tree with a face. Ah, we're hungry for some princess. Even though those are just logs. Actually, this is what Walt Disney said when he was choosing Snow White for his first feature film. And these are his words. I don't know why I picked Snow White. It's a thing I remembered as a kid. I saw Margaret Clark in it in Kansas City one time when I was a newsboy. They had a big showing for all the newsboys, and I went and saw Snow White. It was probably one of my first big feature pictures I'd ever seen. That was back in 1916 or something. Somewhere way back. But anyways, to me, I thought it was a perfect story. I had the sympathetic dwarves and things. I had the prince and the girl, the romance. I had the heavy. I just thought it was a perfect story. It makes sense why Walt would want to choose the story of Snow White. I mean, it clearly impacted him when he was young, so it's understandable why he would want it to be his first movie, especially since, Snow White was actually, I'm sorry, Walt Disney was actually a teenager when he saw the 1916 movie, which was a silent movie. Now, Disney had originally planned to produce Snow White as a silly symphony short, but he reconsidered after he believed that the story had enough potential to be a movie. And the budget for Snow White back in 1937 was the budget was $1.5 million. Quite impressive. I mean, a movie made for $1 million back then, that would be considered that would be considered expensive. That's like that's like making a $200 million movie, if you catch my drift. I mean, considered, I guess, normal by today's standards. Did I mention that for her time, Adriana Caselotti has such a pleasant operatic voice? I mean, she's a beautiful soprano. And I usually do like hearing her voice every now and then. I mean, it's a nice voice, you know. She's definitely a soprano. I guess I can also talk about an interesting fact about the music. Now, uh, uh, music. Oh yeah. So now, since Disney did not have its own music publishing company at the time, the eventual Walt Disney Records, the publishing rights for the music and songs were administered through Born Co. Music Publishers, which continues to hold these rights to this day. In later years, Walt Disney Studios, they were able to acquire back the music rights from many of their other films, but they were unable to buy the music rights to Snow White, Pinocchio, Dumbo, or most of the Silly Symphony cartoons. Snow White also became the first American film to have a soundtrack album released in conjunction with the feature film. Can you believe that? I mean, that's usually a normal thing by today's standards. You have a tie-in soundtrack to that's almost a companion piece to the movie. But I guess back then it wasn't often it often didn't happen. Now, Disney was when Disney was making Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, the movie was influenced by MGM's Romeo and Juliet from 1936, along with the original Nosferatu from 1922 and The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. It makes sense. Now, like I said, the budget was $1.5 million. And it was so expensive that Disney had to mortgage his house to help finance the film's production. For 1937, that's a massive sum. Midway through, Disney needed a $250,000 loan to finish the film. Disney ran a rough cut for Joseph Rosenberg of Bank of America, who sat impassively during the showing. Then Rosenberg turned to the worried Disney and said, "Walt, that thing is going to make a hatful of money." And he approved the loan, and yeah, he was right. I mean, thank God. Could you imagine if this film back in the 1930s was a box office bomb? I mean, the idea of animated movies would be impossible. I mean, I guess it could have been redone in a different decade when people were more patient. But yeah, we'd miss out on a lot of other iconic films, if that makes sense. And you might not believe it, but very few of the animators at the Disney studio had artistic training. And one of the animators was Grim Natwick, who was known for designing and animating Betty Boop for Fleischer Studios. And he showed an understanding of human female anatomy. And when Walt Disney hired Natwick, he was given female characters to animate almost exclusively. Kind of makes sense. I mean, Betty Boop was a 1930s cartoon, so I guess you can almost see similarities between Betty Boop and Snow White. Almost. I mean, they're both white and have black hair, and they both have soprano voices. That's about it. But actually, I think Betty Boop might have done a Snow White cartoon. You should really be careful with your social cues, Snow. Where's the other one? It's just not it's not a stocking on the doorknob. Now, this is what Walt Disney had to say about casting Adriana Castellati. Castellati. Gesundheit, squirrel. Now, this is what he said. "I wanted to get a voice for Snow White that would be kind of away from everyday. Kind of off in another world. And I was hunting for a certain quality voice. So I had a boy searching for voices. He went everywhere. I wanted someone who could sing too, because I was going to use a lot of songs. So he kept bringing these people in. So one day he came in with a voice. I listened to it. I said, "That's perfect." I said, "She sounds to me like a 14-year-old girl." And he said, uh, "Well, she's 18, you know." But that was it. It was a little girl called Adriana Casalati, and she came from an opera family. She could do all this beautiful bird-like stuff. So I signed her. Which, makes sense. The fact that she's from an opera family makes a lot of sense, because Casalati has a very unique singing voice, very opera-like, very soprano-like, and it does carry the film, in my opinion. Now, Walt Disney did not focus on the idea of a Snow White movie again until the autumn of 1935. It was believed that the Silly Symphony short The Goddess of Spring may have placed doubt in his studio's abilities to animate a realistic girl. Apparently, a 3-month trip to Europe that summer restored Disney's confidence. At that point, Disney and his writers focused on the scenes in which Snow White and the Dwarfs are introduced to the audience and each other. He laid out the likely assignments for everyone working on the film in a memorandum of November 25th, 1935, and had decided on the personalities of the individual dwarfs, who I'll eventually get to. "You pesky squirrels! Don't put cobwebs in my hole!" At least it wasn't Mickey Mouse in that hole. He'd probably be like, "Hey, cease and desist! Ha." That's a unique mug. Well, good thing Sneezy wasn't there. What else does that tail do? "Excuse me, that's my apartment," says the spider. That's strangely satisfying. Seeing the birds prep that vase of flowers. Ooh. Sorry, I am sitting down while recording this, and it does. And given that I'm a tall guy, it's not easy. River water, the best source of laundry. Still, those raccoons must be pretty good at doing laundry washing. As is that chipmunk. I sometimes forget that Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs also had a Broadway musical. Now, now the what's the Broadway musical to Snow White? Now, the musical Broadway musical was released in 1969. Well, first produced in 1969. And I guess I could talk about each individual voice actor that voiced all 7 dwarves. Now, Doc is voiced by Roy Atwell. Atwell was known for playing characters that misdeliver their lines or stammer, which makes sense. And he's was and Atwell was known for being in films like Don't Get Personal, The Harvester, Behind the Mic, Honolulu, Abby's Irish Rose, and Where There's Life. Now, Happy was voiced by Otis Harlan, and Harlan was a comedian, and he was one of the earliest known American voice actors, born in 1865. So the dude was in his 70s when he voiced Happy. He was in a lot of silent films, and he was even, he even played one character in George Washington Jr. Oh, dopey. And Bashful is voiced by Scotty Matra, and, he was in a lot of uncredited silent films. He was even in a Laurel and Hardy movie known as Babes in Toyland. It was a Christmas movie. And Sneezy was voiced by Billy Gilbert. And poor Sneezy suffers from hay fever. And Gilbert was a comedian, and he was known for his comic sneeze routine, so of course he'd be suitable to voice a character like Sneezy. And of course, I'll mention the other two actors that voiced one of the other seven dwarfs eventually. Ugh, is no one gonna give the turtle help? Oof. That way they know which one is which. Yeah, whistling while you work certainly does a toll on you. And it's happening to the Brook Bunnies, too. Man, do those birds work out? They must be strong enough to lift the blanket. I feel so bad for the turtle. Portally. Oh no. It's so funny how Grumpy is still scowling while singing Hi Ho. The lit slate. Oh, the cricket was mentioned. Now, Grumpy was voiced by Pinto Colvig. And not only does he voice Grumpy, he also voices the other dwarf, Sleepy. So Colvig has the task of voicing two dwarfs. And to Colvig's credit, he definitely gives Grumpy and Sleepy two very distinct voices. I actually thought he voiced Sneezy, but I was wrong. Pinto Colvig voiced Grumpy and Sleepy. Now, Grumpy and Sleepy weren't the only characters Kolvig was known for voicing. He was also known for voicing Bozo the Clown and Bluto in the Popeye cartoons. And he was the original voice of the character Goofy and Pluto. That's right, the voice of Grumpy and was also the original voice of Goofy. Yuck! It still blows my mind that Goofy and Grumpy share the same voice. So, yeah, Pinto Colvig and Stuart Buchanan both shared the role of Goofy and both voiced characters in Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Of course, Colvig has a dual role of voicing two characters, and he, like I say, Colvig definitely does a great job, and Grumpy's definitely the most developed. I mean, he's so stubborn. He's kind of a woman hater, but like not like one of the incel woman haters. Kind of a comical woman hater, if that makes sense. Of course, incel woman haters are unintentionally funny due to how pathetic they are, if you know what I mean. I know a few woman haters who are pretty much jokes. I like my chairs dusted. Undusted. Yeah. Who would steal your dishes and then put them in the cupboard? That's a very weird thief. A thief like that would have to have OCD. Yeah. And Grumpy knows a thing or two about poison, I guess. Oof, if you only knew, Grumpy. If you only knew. Whoops. Wrong thing to do, Bashful. Wow, Sneezy must have very powerful sneezes. He could probably join the Avengers, and he'd be able to take down Thanos and Loki with his sneezes. I feel that. Yeah, these guys have definitely had to put up with sneezes for a long time. I must ask you a question, but I'll sneeze it for later. Those birds are so mean. I mean, they're funny mean, but... And last but not least, there is Dopey, the only dwarf who doesn't speak. Well, he doesn't really have dialogue. He has, like nonverbal sound effects, but, there's actually a reason for that. Now, Disney struggled to find a voice for Dopey. He actually considered having Looney Tunes voice actor Mel Blanc voice Dopey. Could you imagine if Mel Blanc voiced Dopey? I mean, it definitely would have been interesting. But yeah, but I guess Mel Blanc must have been busy doing shorts for Warner Brothers, and he was unavailable. So, because they couldn't find a suitable voice for Dopey, they ended up just making Dopey a mute character. I mean, Dopey is voiced by someone, but he's like he communicates through sounds and pantomime instead of speaking. And Dopey was voiced by Eddie Collins, and well, yeah, one of many. And but of course, Eddie Collins wasn't the only actor to voice Dopey. Yeah. He was also voiced by a sound effects artist known as Jimmy Donald. Kind of doing. He did uncredited sound effects, and he was also did Dopey's hiccuping and crying in Snow White. He also did various voices in. He was a percussionist in Fantasia, and he ended up voicing Mickey in 1948, and he continued to voice. Jimmy McDonald continued to voice Mickey Mouse up until 1978. But yeah, Dopey was voiced by two actors, Eddie Collins and Jimmy McDonald. Now you know. Poor Dopey. Oh yeah, Dopey ain't messing around. Man, those doors must be flexible. Man, could you imagine if the seven dwarfs actually attacked Snow White and unintentionally killed her? They technically would have committed royalty assassination. That would be bad. I mean, I'm sure the queen would be pleased, but I don't know about Snow White's dad. But there's one thing I don't that puzzles me. Are the seven dwarfs brothers? I mean, they never explicitly state whether the snow that the if the seven dwarfs are related. Aw. It's ridiculous. Yeah, perfect hiding spot. Whether he's an actual doctor, I'm not sure. Because he doesn't have his coffee. I don't think Sleepy likes the. I don't think Sleepy likes the taste of coffee. Now, of course, due to the movie's popularity, Snow White has been re released in theaters dozens of times, like through each decade. I kind of wish I had the chance to maybe watch the film in theaters, because, well, like a lot of kids my age, I watched Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs on a TV screen on video and DVD. And he's right. Huh, it's funny. I mean, Grumpy is technically right. Give Grumpy credit. He was right. Dumple Laplands. Gooseberry pie. I wonder what real gooseberry pie tastes like. I wonder what kind of soup that is. It don't look like chicken noodle. There are actually two deleted scenes in the Snow White animated movie. One of them is like it even features a song called "Music in Your Soup." Shame that song was never featured. But I guess it was left out for runtime, if that makes sense. Could you imagine if Pinocchio was one of the seven dwarves? He said, "Oh yeah, I washed my hands." Oh, you haven't washed, have you, Pinocchio? I can tell since you're lying. Well, shoot. Oh yeah, right. Even Snow White knows that they're BSing her. Like, can I say BSing? For almost as if Snow White's given a look that says, "I'm not mad. I'm disappointed." Oh, that's a blush of shame. Nice try, Happy. Oh dear. Well, isn't that disciplinary? Yeah, it's like, do we wash our hands or do we decide to not eat? Even seven dwarfs need to eat. I thought Dopey was the one who didn't speak. which is what I'm sure most modern cringe YouTubers say every day. Yeah, water's not gonna bite. An old warthog. Actually, this song, it's like part of the music reminds me a little bit to the beginning part of Steamboat Willie. They're very similar in my opinion, or maybe it's just my brain just associating it. So it's weird. Hey, that rhymed. Yeah. To this day, sometimes I comically say perfume like perfume because of grumpy. Ah, like, oh, seriously? Happy? I can't even with you. Ooh, man, the way Dobie's shaking his head, it makes me think of the meme. Never, under any circumstances, pause a Disney movie. I feel bad for you if you did pause. Like, excuse me? Cue malicious compliance. Ooh, you know they're up to something. Duh. Well, there's a soup. Whoop. Oh. Yep, those hiccups are definitely courtesy of Jimmy McDonald, another voice actor to Mickey Mouse. Haha. Honestly, I'd love to be the a fly on the wall just to see the recording of this. And I guess I have time to talk about the actress that voiced the Wicked Queen. I should also point out that the Queen's name, never mentioned, is Grinhilda. And Grinhilda is voiced by Lucille Laverne. And she was known for her appearances in early sound films, as well as her triumphs on the American stage. So, yeah, Lucille Laverne was a stage actress. I mean, her earliest role was in 1915. She was a midwife in a movie about Abraham Lincoln. Specifically, an Abraham Lincoln movie directed by D.W. Griffith and distributed by United Artists. And well, after Snow White, well, that was her final film role. Yeah, played for a fool. And I guess I could also point out who voiced the Magic Mirror. Now, the Magic Mirror was voiced by Maroney Olson. And he was also a Broadway actor, played John Knox in Mary of Scotland. And he was also in an adaptation of The Three Musketeers. And, other stuff that you're probably not familiar with. And give Lucille Laverne credit. Not only does she voice the evil queen, she also voices the hag appearance of the queen. You know, a witch. I do wonder if she provided that hag voice, well, the hag laugh. Naturally, how you turn a scream of fright into liquid, I'll never know. Yeah, thunder, final ingredient. Whether the appearance is permanent, I don't know. Maybe it's temporary, but I know this much. This transformation scene has definitely given children nightmares. Like some couldn't even finish watching Snow White after seeing this scene. I mean, can you blame them? Oof, warts on the left hand. Yuck. Yeah, that's good voice acting on Laverne's part. It's a shame she didn't get credited. Ah! Even the Raven's scared. Now, of course, the apple isn't the only murder device that the Queen tried to use to kill Snow White. She tried killing her with a laced boat ice that she laced up so tightly that Snow White fainted. But thankfully the dwarves were able to loosen the lace. And she even tried to kill Snow White with a poisoned comb. Yep, thankfully the dwarfs removed the comb from her. Now, if I recall, the little dance song that the dwarfs sing was inspired by a 1930s short known as "The Cookie Carnival," which coincidentally features the voice of grumpy and sleepy Pinto Colvig voicing a gingerbread man. I've watched a Cookie Carnival. It's a pleasant short. I totally recommend it. I think you can find it on either Disney Plus or YouTube. I before Disney Plus, I actually watched the Cookie Carnival on YouTube. Yeah, long before the days of Disney Plus, a lot of the Disney shorts and silly symphonies I either watched on DVD or on YouTube. I remember watching Donald Duck and the Gorilla on YouTube. Dopey, you got mad skills as a drummer. Let's hope Sleepy didn't get CTE. Was that dark? Oh, who am I kidding? Snow White's pretty dark and messed up, so I think it only makes sense to do dark and messed up jokes. You got some mighty strong feet, Dopey. May I have this dance? Uh, you work out, Sneezy? And this scene is it's also pretty iconic. And has been recycled in animation. Yeah, I've seen the posts of recycled Disney animation. A 2-string banjo. Oh, wait, no, 3-string. It works. Or, I swear, in some shots it's a 3-string banjo. In other shots it's a 2-string banjo. What's up with that? Oh, look at me, I'm acting like CinemaSins. And now it's a 1-string banjo. What the flip-flop? Uh-oh. Oh, looks like Snow White experienced a sneezy sneeze firsthand. Or maybe a crush on logical standards. A Prince Charming. Until you redraw someone like him. Even though you only knew him for less than a day. Now, did I mention that Snow White was nominated for an Oscar for Best Score. I mean, it didn't win, but it makes sense that it would be nominated at the time. Now, Castellati sings this song beautifully, and if you want to hear a good cover to Someday My Prince Will Come, I would totally recommend listening to Barbara Streisand's cover of Someday My Prince Will Come, which is available in the special edition to Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs that was released in 2002, which is how I'm watching Snow White right now. What a unique cuckoo clock. Or is it a ribbit clock? Croak clock? Croak clock? Croak clock. Try saying that 10 times. I mean, as alliterative. Oop, Dopey gets dibs on the night's pillow. Oh yeah, Dopey's living fun and fancy free. It's actually very nice of the dwarves. And now for an unpleasant feud over who gets dibs on the pillow. But ain't y'all heard of dibs? Sadly, Doc's advice is false on deaf ears. Thank goodness for that spare feather, which is surprisingly comfortable. Is the feather on steroids? Even if it is for just a day. Yeah, yes, it's actually it's actually nice how Grumpy does eventually care for Snow White's well-being. Sleepy managed to find a way to sleep in a drawer quite comfortably. Ugh, let's hope Happy doesn't suffer any back problems because of that. He's probably gonna have a crick in the neck. That is one fat drop of water. I guess Sleepy's nose must make for a good mattress for that fly. wonder what ingredients you used for the poison apple. Then again, I guess it's a kind of magic. Could you imagine if it was a green apple? Of course, I think green apples go great with caramel. Yeah, whatever. I'm not even hungry. And so we have a classic fairy tale trope. You have to wonder if the Wicked Queen is breaking the fourth wall at this point. Then again, she is probably confiding in the Raven. In one of the cuts, the prince was going to be captured. Ugh, what did that poor guy do? But yeah, like the prince was going to be kidnapped by the queen, and the queen was going to use skeletons as marionettes to entertain him. But it was storyboarded, but never got fully animated. It's a shame that the prince didn't play enough of a bigger role. Yeah, you know the queen has a reputation when even the seven dwarfs know how wicked she is when it comes to dark magic. Oh dear, I feel like sneezing now. Excuse me. There's another Mikey sneeze. The dude could take out Scarlet Witch if he had to in Doctor Strange 2. Dopey must be super quick. That's actually kind of sweet of Grumpy. He does care. Oh, not so grumpy now. I think that's the first time anyone's shown him kindness. I got a persona to keep. He does like her as a friend. Ooh, the vultures are interested. Or maybe they see her as their next meal. You know, it would be so funny if Babish from Binging with Babish decided to do a video with the Grumpy Pie. Yeah, Binging with Babish, the Grumpy Pie from Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. I wonder what kind of pie it is, because I have no idea what the fruit is. Well, I hope those birds wash their talons. Yep, I'm definitely nicknaming it the Grumpy Pie. But that's so nice that she made a pie for him. Ah, gooseberry pies. Is gooseberry a real fruit? Ooh, the vultures scare the birds. They're like, oh, no, you don't. Yeah, the woodland creatures are thinking, oh no, it's game over, man. Game over. Yeah, they don't do something, it's game over, man. Home to work and home from work. That's a big difference. How rich are the dwarves since they mine diamonds? I mean, I can imagine they're well off if they can afford ingredients for a pie and soup. I have a theory that maybe as the peddler, the queen has magical vibes that make Snow White more naive. Because who would fall for that? Well, like I said, that's just a theory. I like that Sleepy's the first to catch on. And they realize, oh yeah, Sleepy's onto something. Oh, you guys made it. Hey, at least you don't have to deal with Mario, Mr. Turtle. And I saw that bird swooning over you. That's parkour. Can a wish grow cold? I feel a little woozy here. Now, interestingly enough, in the original Grimm fairy tale, it's not true love's kiss that saves Snow White. It's just happenstance. Like, a prince stumbles upon the seemingly dead Snow White lying in her glass coffin during a hunting trip. After he hears the story from the seven dwarves, the prince brings her to her proper resting place back at her father's castle. All of a sudden, when Snow White's being transported, one of the prince's servants trips and loses his balance. This dislodges the piece of poisoned fruit from Snow White's throat, which magically revives her. In one other version, the prince becomes so infatuated with Snow White that he carries her coffin wherever he goes until one of his servants, in anger, lifts Snow White from the coffin and strikes her on the back, causing the piece of apple to come out of her throat. That prince has issues in the 1812 version, I tell you. In hindsight, the queen's death is pretty undignified. Chased to her death by seven little men? That's probably it's an undignified way to go. Now, if you think this death, her falling to her death and the boulder crushing her was a brutal way to go, in the Grimm fairy tale, it is much more brutal. Like, when the queen sees that Snow White's getting married, she tries to sow chaos and kill Snow White again for I think maybe the fourth time. But when the prince sees that the Wicked Queen is a threat to Snow White, because Snow White is like, oh yeah, she tried to kill me three times. The prince punishes the evil queen by ordering the queen to wear a pair of red hot iron slippers and to dance into them until she drops dead. That is one messed up way to kill a villain in a Grimm fairy tale. You gotta remember that Grimm fairy tales were messed up and very brutal. And we have one of the saddest scenes in Snow White. I mean, when Grumpy cries, oh, I think the entire audience lost it. And even I was sad when I first watched it. It's done quite seriously, to their credit. I got nothing. This is a perfectly done scene. Shit, I got a tear in my right eye. Just looking at it. For how long, we don't know. I guess, seasons, from what it looks like. Oh yeah, there's a prince! And I guess, the maiden who slept in a glass coffin must have been an urban legend. Yeah, I think the prince gets a minute of screen time total. He only appears in two scenes, and it's barely 2 minutes. I could imagine a YouTube editor making a video that says Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, but it's only when the prince appears. That would be so funny if someone did that. Maybe they did. It's YouTube and the internet. I'd be surprised. Now, I wonder what kingdom the prince is from. Is that a hood or a coat or a cape? Both, maybe? Did he read about the antidote? What was he doing throughout the entirety of the film, aside from looking for her? And so we have the trope of the true love's kiss in fairy tale movies. It's actually it's a nice trope in hindsight. And it is a satisfying reveal. There was actually going to be a visual gag where Sleepy put the fly in the coffin after Snow White gets out and is revived. I think it would have been too distracting, in my opinion. Why do people theorize that the prince is the angel of death? Oh, because it's a white horse? That's ridiculous. Yeah, he's not so grumpy anymore. Yeah, and I think that's the last speaking line. At least Snow White gets the last word. What a beautiful backdrop. And we have the Prince's Castle. Some think it's the basis for the Walt Disney logo. I don't know. It's a lovely castle. And they all lived happily ever after. Well, except for the Queen, of course. But yeah, that was Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, the original animated movie. A wonderfully made film. I mean, is it as perfect as everyone says it is? I guess by today's standards, probably not, but I can understand why it left such an impact on Walt Disney himself. And I do believe that I agree that primitive as it is, modern animated movies that we enjoy today wouldn't be possible without the success of Snow White. And to think that people were so skeptical and nicknamed it Disney's Folly, but Disney got the last laugh, and it was like the biggest game changer of them all. So, but yeah, I mean, personally, if you held a gun to my head and told me and asked me whether I liked Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs or Pinocchio, I would probably say I like Pinocchio more. But I do enjoy watching Snow White on occasion. It's definitely a comfort food, in my opinion. I mean, Disney wouldn't be the big empire that it is today without the success of Snow White and Mickey Mouse and well, Disney as a whole owes its success to Snow White and Mickey Mouse. They're synonymous with Walt Disney in general. And I'm very proud to do a commentary for this. Anyway, thank you for listening to my commentary companion for Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. I'll be sure to do a commentary for Marvel movies next, like non-MCU Marvel movies. That's the plan. But don't worry, I plan on doing a couple more animated Disney movies, since 2025 is quite the anniversary year for several films. But anyway, thank you for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. Don't have a good day. Have a great day.